Hi, my name is Marggie Moertl, and I am an author and also a life doula and an inner life coach. And now I call myself a spiritual life doula. So I'll talk about that a little bit more. But that is why my book is about, it's called Sacred Passings, and it talks about really to do a deep dive into life on an energetic level and what role the soul plays in all of that. I discovered a huge spiritual passion about 30 years ago after I went through an awakening, one that to help people to learn to hear and to recognize that inner voice and to follow our guidance, not just pray and ask for guidance and then go off living. It's how to tune in, how to hear it, and then how to follow it. It's really needs to be a daily practice if you adopt it. But that's really what my book is about, because I work with the dying and to help all of us lead a more sacred living so that we can have a more sacred passing. But my manuscript is still in process. It does show the metaphysical truths of our living, the energetic realities of how we really are connected to the divine through the vibrations and things like that. And it also shows how our soul decides when life begins and when decides when life is going to end. But that's just one chapter to really do all that explaining, but the rest of it shows my work with the dying and how that plays out. So besides the energetic realities, I talk about the different elements of our life, the earth element, the water element, air element, and fire. And when I'm working with people who have terminal illness, I can see the different elements starting to pull back. I don't always talk about it, but sometimes as much as 2 years before, you can see changes and I recognize what's happening. So then you know that the end is coming. And of course, I accept death as an absolutely natural part of living, and also from a sacred point of view, a joyous event as your soul passes back into a different reality. The trouble that I see being a registered nurse and a former hospice nurse is our care of our dying doesn't even begin to talk about any of these things. It doesn't exist in the awareness, it doesn't exist in the discussion, it's not documented, it's not supported. There are many people who work in those fields that use their own knowing to help people, but there's no way that it's really attended to. And so our people die without the support that the soul needs. And I'll go into more of what I use now to help with that. But I think we've all had times in our life when we feel a little bit like in a bit of a soul crisis, like having trouble making a decision about where to go in life, stay in a marriage, get in a marriage, how to cope with grief. It's more than just an emotional thing. It's really a gut-wrenching inner twisting that we all have at different times in our lives. And that is what we go through in the living. And I have been doing some studying and have ways to help people with that now too. But 2025 was named as the Year of the Soul within the spiritual community. And that's because our evolution now demands that we open up to this reality. It's out there. Like I was saying before you came in, there's many more things in the on YouTube, online, in different places where they're talking about the soul or your soul's voice or in those things. It's because it is becoming into our awareness. And so I hope that our care for the dying starts to adopt some learning of how to support the dying with that. I studied last summer with the Soul Midwives from the UK. I have followed Felicity Warner for 20 years and actually use her book as one of my textbooks for my doula work. She's phenomenal. It's a very holistic, very much more broad way of looking at life and death. And I don't know if that's how all of the medicine in the UK is, but I sort of suspect it's much more than ours. But But at any rate, I studied how to offer spiritual support to the soul for the dying. And I learned how to use, there are some high frequency oils that are used to anoint. And that goes along with what our ministers, I come from a Catholic background, when they anoint the sick, that's exactly what they're doing. But that's only the priest coming and doing it as you're sick. Now is the time where we can all learn how to use these oils, how to anoint people, and help, not only to help them as they die, but during the dying process. There are many oils for many different parts of that. There are some of the oils for people that are having trouble dealing with, because your life review goes through, and so all of your mistakes start passing through. And there are oils to help make that gentle. I don't know how else to say it, instead of our guilt and blame and shame getting in the way. And these are the highest vibration oils that you can't, they're not aromatherapy, you don't put them in a distiller, and you anoint and use them that way. I brought one today if anybody wants to use it before I leave, holy basil. And when you use it in this anointing fashion and then do a meditation, that oil is meant to, it's very grounding, it brings you down into your body, it brings you into, pulls all the parts of yourself together so you're focused and grounded. It also opens our crown chakra so that we're open to the divine. It strengthens our etheric body, which is for the spiritual aspects of our being and things like that. And that's just one of about 20 oils that we learned how to use. They're just incredible. So that's what I'm writing my book about, to help shift the consciousness, to help make people aware, and hopefully that we can start to shift how we care for the dying. I have a client that I'm using the oils on now, and it's wonderful because you don't do it every day. You do it when the moment arises, when you can see he's wrestling with something, and then I ask if I can use this oil on him, and he's always happy because it does make a difference. It's not like you're going to suddenly feel peaceful and it's all over. It eases you into it. It helps your soul feel supported. It helps your whole emotional body calm down. They're beautiful, beautiful things. So I also wanted to talk today about writing my book. Are you writers, or are you, no, want to be? Okay. Well, for anyone online that's listening, I did enroll in the Hay House Writers Program last year when I started writing this book. And if anybody knows Hay House, they are the ones that are known for publishing so many nonfiction, self-help, or healing books. And so for me, it was a joy to be able to be in their online groups and talk about the language that I know is reality, which to me this is more normal than the rest, and to be able to talk about anything and they understand that language and no one's going to say, what the heck is this about? They have a writing program in 2 lanes, and you can pick on just writing support and getting lots of coaching on creating a good self-help book. But I chose what they call the Authorpreneur Program. And that is understanding that self-help and healing books are written certainly to help others and to educate them, but it's also to promote your own business, because authors have to market their own books in today's world. Whether a publisher publishes them or you self-publish, it's your job to get out and get the buzz going and get people aware of your books. And so it just led me through so many different things. I have notes here that'll tell you better than I can remember. It's the first thing that they did was teach us how to pick the exact genre. To me, it was like nonfiction, memoir. Well, there's 10 kinds of memoir, and so which one is yours exactly? And then to help us to write a really good hook, because they keep saying, unless you have a good hook, forget it. No one's going to help you out. There's 20 other books on the shelf, and so you have to have that pop phrase that you can say. And it's not like it's a one-on-one class. There's hundreds in this group, but we would meet monthly online, and they have a Q&A and coach us, and then they have a whole online platform for these things and exercises. The thing I found probably the most helpful was their help with social media. because I do have to market my own books. And social media, because of my age, is really not my favorite thing, never has been. And it's not as innate to me as it is to the rest of the world. And I had been getting some social media help, and it was very valuable, but it was sort of like one stop for all. And being told to do a Facebook and Instagram. I never even was on Instagram before, and I still don't know how it works, and I don't care to find out because my work isn't visual, you know. But I was told to do it every single week, 3 times a week, and that was helpful. But then when I went into this program, they were coaching us, if you don't like Instagram, don't use it for your business. Find the ones you do. And they turned me on to Substack, which I love. It's for writers especially, but anybody. And I'm able to write a short blog or essay every week or as often as I want to, and you gain followers that way. And when you market your book, you have to have followers. That's how it works. You know, I think I'm talking to people that understand like this is news to not the rest of these guys. And I'm developing a YouTube channel, something I've wanted to do for years. And in my naivety, I thought, oh, I'll start it November 1st. Well, I got a long way to go. There's a lot to do. But I want to be able to get on every single week and talk about elements of the book, because it's not, I want to sell my book, but I also want to help others and to educate and to bring people along. So that has been extremely helpful to me. They had us write a book proposal, and there's huge steps in that. It kind of threw me off because suddenly I'm writing a proposal instead of my book. I followed the steps like they said, and I did it, but now I'm going back and getting back to my book, and I want to get that finished up, and then I'll rewrite the proposal, which is more helpful to me because that's my process. But from that, it's just been an enormous help. So anyone, any writer or author that's listening, to really seek it out if you can look into it. Yeah. Yeah, they have a publishing contest that they just awarded a huge publishing contract to one of the people in our group. They don't usually take unsolicited manuscripts. In fact, they only do for these groups. And you don't have to have 1 million followers. They said their average person that they assign an outside contract to has 250,000 followers. Well, I sent it in with 17 on Instagram and 300 on Facebook, you know, which to me, the 300 on Facebook is really good, you know, but you want to get your book published, you got to do things differently. So, but anyway, because we were all beginners, we weren't expected to have those numbers at this point. So they awarded 1 contract and 9 honorable mentions, which is great. I'll have another chance to resubmit in April. Some people stay in the program for years. I'm not going to. I will pursue other publishers or self-publish when I get things the way I want them. So, any questions? A lot of information in a short time. I went fast like I always do.
When do you think you will be publishing your book?
Well, again, in my naivety, I thought, oh, I'll write it, and because I'm used to self-publishing. I want, even since I started 6 months ago, because I do so much spiritual opening, my message keeps changing. Now, I'm not going to keep rewriting the book over and over, but I do want to go, I'm going to keep going from here, but then go back and really make the beginning more what I am today and do it that way. So I don't know. I will submit the proposal for April, so that would be sometime in 26 or 27 it'll be out. But more than likely I'll have to self-publish, and so that alone is, once you get it all written, then there's editing and formatting and cover design. There's a lot to do. So a couple of years. The other books I wrote, Life is a Prayer, took me 5 years to write completely, because I did finish the manuscript and I took it to a private editor who recommended, she said, this isn't enough from your heart, so go back and rewrite it. And that was a blow, but it was the best advice I got. So I went back and rewrote it, and that takes time. And then to go through the whole publishing thing takes a good long while too. So it's not unusual, yeah.
Getting back to your first part of your program, you talked about oils, like basil oil.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a little bit more about the oils?
Well, I did bring a book. And I also brought an oil if you want to try it. This is Felicity Warner's book. She is the Soul Midwife. She created Soul Midwives. And she's written some of the best books. She is pure love. I mean, just an incredibly gifted person. And she's just wonderful. But she goes through, I mentioned holy basil. Let me find it. A whole chapter on holy basil. She goes through just the botanical information, the legendary power, the esoteric qualities, when to use it, all sorts of things. She even aligns it with the planets and all of that. And then she has a meditation for each of them. And that's where I took it to a class I'm leading for seniors, and I said, would you guys like to try it? And I just put a dot in everybody's hand, and we listened to the meditation, and everybody was like, whoa. It's not like a high like drugs. It's a high of being opened. That's all I can say. You feel more expanded. That's what you're supposed to. You know, we are so used to living in this, our own little bubble, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But the more you want to be expanded, and then that bubble doesn't feel so great anymore, you know. So that's what these are for. So I'd be happy to do that meditation with you if you want to. And then she has case studies and things like that. Yeah. There's LME that is really for people that are approaching death, but nobody approaches death just like, oh, okay, good, you know, off you go. That's not how it works. Your soul is doing its own struggle, not because the soul is afraid of leaving, but your body is wanting to, you know, you're holding on to it in places. And so when you get to that point, LME almost gives a little glimpse of the afterlife to reassure the person. And this isn't all thought out. This is something that happens on a deeper level, so that we ease up and say, oh, okay, that might be a good place to go, you know, and you can get more and more open towards the thought of actually releasing your body. And even though that's what my whole work is, and I think dying is wonderful, I don't encourage people to die when they're healthy, but when they're ill, I see no point in, you know, lengthening that. It's not my call for each person. So I'm one who encourages the passing, because there's a whole life after this. But when it's my turn, that normal fighting to stay here, you know, that protect your body, and, you know, that like not wanting to die, that happens to every single person on some level throughout the whole dying process. So, did that?
I'd like to hear more about your, I guess, regular practices. So, you know, you run your own business, and so there's that, and you're a nurse, or were a nurse, so you have that like scientific mind, and then, you know, you do these other, all this other stuff, and it's emotional work, and you're a writer, and that's solitary work, and there's a lot of, I don't know, how do you juggle it all, I suppose? And like, what practices help you navigate all of the emotions and all of the processes and appointments, and like balancing these things that are so diametrically opposed,
right.
You know,
Yeah.
living, dying, the soul, and then like business taxes and like how.
That's the hard part, the linear. That's the very hard part, because you can't just say, you can accept it and say this is part of the process. But that is always the hard part for anyone who's a healer, because we're good at other things. For one thing, I'm at an age where I get to live alone now. My children are in the area, I see them a lot, but I have no other obligations but my own, and I have to support myself. But it comes from a passion. I can't not do it. You know, I can say I'm tired today and I'm not going to do it today, but I must. That's that passion. It just comes over you. And that happened to me with my spiritual awakening. When you start to understand and align with that, something changes. And believe me, I have fought it many times and delayed it and saying, I don't feel like being a healer. And so taking a couple years where I don't, those are the most miserable years of my life then. And so you have free choice. But you get smart and you do it more and more. When I see clients, they are part of this, so that's not a problem. Like today, I went to see my client because they called and they were having a problem, so I hopped over there. That's the joyous part. It also gets me out of the house and down into Madison and doing something outside of me, but it's all for the same purposes and stuff like that. The writing comes from here. Passion, that's all I can say. And I know that I'm in charge of it. And for example, you ask how do I stay healthy. Saturday, I went to a shaman retreat all day outside at Holy Wisdom. We had a fire ceremony out in that cold weather. It was so wonderful, and you come home just, that's how it's supposed to be, but it's separate from me here. But everything that happens to me there opens me up and enlivens my work. So that's where I keep thinking I got to rewrite that, But I struggle with things like the holidays coming and going to chit-chatty parties and family stuff where there's dynamics and stuff. I don't have to get into it, but that really, I literally feel it. And the chit-chat stuff irritates me because I think there's so much more to talk about. You don't have to be solving the world's problems, but let's talk about something real, and that comes across as very arrogant to people, but I can't help that, I just have little time for talking about people or, what's on social media, and I'll go home, please, which that's the truth. That's just how I feel, and I am not judging anyone, but this is who I am in the mix, So it's nice too when I can find people of like mind to have friendships with, so I can talk honestly and openly all the time, which is nice. So, did that answer it? Yeah.
So you have a regular clientele that you serve?
Yeah, with my doula work, I can't have dozens of people, obviously, but I usually have up to 3 at a time. It depends upon who they are and what's going on with them. But I had one client, she just passed this spring. I walked with her for 2 years, which was a very long time, and it was so wonderful. So I had her, and then I had 1 or 2 others in addition. But she was the kind of person that she reached out to me 2 years prior with stage 4 rectal cancer, but she was in charge, that's just who she was, and she would handle it. She'd call for advice, and then she would research it, and then, so she didn't need a lot of hand-holding. In fact, she didn't want hand-holding, but as we grew closer and closer, we did a lot of long conversations on the phone. And that enriches me. We just had wonderful talks, So it's not all at the bedside of dying people by any means. In fact, for me, it has turned out much less of that and more of guiding people and helping them prepare. And I used to, like when I was on the Soul Midwives, everyone talked about all the experiences at the deathbed. And then I start wondering what's wrong with me. I think, no, I'm attracting the clients that are exactly right for me and that. But it's very unique and wonderful work, and a lot of family dynamics, which even when I was a home care hospice nurse, that's something I excel at. I know how to go in and help them because I use my energy a certain way, not so good in my own family, but in theirs, But yeah, it's just, I was born for this, and I know it, and that's where the energy comes from. So
you aren't a hospice nurse anymore?
No, I found hospice because of my spiritual awakening and that. I realized how much I absolutely love working with the dying, but I really did not enjoy being a hospice nurse because of all of the computers and the checklists and it's like paying your bills, and my personality just wanted to be there with the people. But at that time, I had no idea there was any way to do that, and so I would go into hospice and stay a year and a half, 2, and then realize I can't do it, I gotta get out. But I always went back, until finally I thought I can figure out my own path, and that's what I finally did. And that's when doulas were new anyway. I invented my own course, and when I did is when I found out there were other programs just starting on the 2 different coasts, and so I got into it with those leaders and learned a lot from them, so yeah. Yeah, and so in Madison, I've discovered there's a whole death community, of death workers like myself. They host networking events and things like that, which is nice to have, There's one was called Good Morning, like Mourning, and they took us to a new green burial site. I know there's always been the Farley Center, and there was another one, and so you get out with those people, and hospice nurses were there, all different kinds of people. It was really fun, so. But just like I'm talking about how I get impatient with people, you can imagine how they ask what I do, and then I'll go talk to that person. It's not as much anymore as I've gotten more comfortable with it, but at first, literally, it would be like a conversation stopper. But the world also, well, for one thing, the baby boomers are all getting of age where we're thinking about death. But I think that the whole conversation has changed around death and dying and stuff. And now we're starting to actually talk about conscious death being legal and how wonderful that will be when that's okay for those who choose that. So it's coming. Would you like to hear any of the book, or do you want me to keep talking, or you tell me.
I'd love to hear some of the book.
Okay. I did bring just one chapter.
You saw it here first.
Well, it might change, but this is my chapter. Like I said, I wrote one chapter that was I still find it boring because it's talking about the energy system and the anatomy, and it's very technical. So this is the next chapter after that, and it's talking about the active stage of dying, which, in hospice there's different stages, and the active stage is when people suddenly are in bed and not getting out of bed and starting that. With a dying person, there's a decline and then a plateau and then a decline, but all of a sudden with the active dying, it's a decline that continues right on down to death. So, okay, the active stage of the dying process. Walking into my client's home again after many times before, I can easily see where in the dying process she is at. I gulp because this courageous woman has shared her walk through illness with me very openly and honestly. This is the woman I was just talking about. I was first introduced to her 2 years ago when she called to ask about my services. Her firm, matter-of-fact voice told me she had stage 4 cancer, but she wasn't ready to die. What she was, though, was frightened. Not as much about her disease, but as about the many details she needed to put into place first. Now, after 2 years together, I can see her meticulous attention to preparing her family, her pets, her home, and her co-workers so that her decline would be managed and supported, care provided, and all other details planned for and attended to. During that initial phone call, I had no idea what her concerns would be. I assumed the typical ones from my other previous clients, but this strong woman faced her illness, pain, and other symptoms from her cancer treatment head on, always calling me to ask for medical information about options or to discuss choices she had been offered. Calling me for information, never advice. She researched each option carefully and sought me only so that I could affirm information she had read about. She was totally in charge of her own life and liked it that way. At that time, I lived less than an hour from her home along Lake Michigan's northeast border. That's when I lived in Door County. Finding her home meant traveling 2-lane highways that wound and stretched along the often rocky cliffs with fierce waves below. She shared with me that her cancer was diagnosed about a year before, and she was still on chemotherapy with an oncologist in the Illinois city she had been living in. That meant each appointment required several hours of driving to and from, something she was content with continuing. This was typical of the type of problem solving I helped her with, how to plan for care in the months ahead. Newly divorced, her family circled around her and were very invested in giving their assistance. She began to develop skin eruptions and other effects from chemotherapy. The oncologist's office only allowed her to speak to the nurse on call, and she felt the answers she was given were incomplete. She researched her rash, sent me photos, and we talked about possibilities on a lengthy call. While she did contact the office again, this time, she told them she wanted to stop treatment. She was ready to allow cancer to do its thing. She had known from the start that at stage 4 there would be no recovery. She quit chemo, got a face rinse to treat the rash, and began to live knowing it was a matter of time. This proved to be one of the most active and creative times for her. She redecorated her home, especially her bedroom, since she was spending more and more time there. She continued her work as a massage therapist, but found new spas that were more supportive of her. That included long drives to neighboring communities until she found just the right blend of work, friendship, and a manager that resonated with her fiercely independent self, because that got in the way a lot. She had moved to northern Wisconsin to share the available living space near her son. He had committed to acting as her primary caregiver since his parents' divorce. While that remained a distant event, he met with me often or called with his own questions as we worked together. He was his mother's son, direct, open, and totally honest. Their relationship was tight and loving, yet fraught with many aspects that a dying mother added to them. Now that she was in her hospital bed today, something she had avoided for as long as possible, that spoke volumes to me. She had only agreed in the past week to use it. Working right up until then, she and her employer had cut her work hours to allow her to continue to offer massage as she was able. Her strong sense of self enjoyed her work, enjoyed being active, and had no intention of becoming anyone's burden. Now, her pallor was my first indicator of his status beyond what the hospital bed spoke as I entered the room. I had moved away during our work together, and she had chosen to remain my client rather than to work with a new local doula that I had offered to arrange. Her family was supportive of all her choices, and this one no different. In those early months, the distance almost increased our connection. We used Zoom to visit when the internet would cooperate, and many phone calls as well. In fact, we had many lengthy phone calls while she drove to Illinois for treatment or when I needed to travel as well. The Zoom meetings also allowed her ex-husband, other relatives, and her son to be included when it felt right to my client or when she felt that she needed their full understanding. But as she deteriorated about 3 months ago, I began calling her son directly to check on her. When she didn't answer my call, I needed assurance that there was a valid reason. Usually I learned that she was sleeping much more or that she'd begun to use CBD oil for pain, which allowed her to feel uplifted as well. Narcotics and other heavy-duty medications were not in her wheelhouse. She was devoted to holistic health and healing. She went through her whole time without any synthetic medications. When other people are taking high doses of Ativan and morphine, she used CBD oil, and that really took a lot. We all talked on the phone whenever a situation arose, or just for me to check in and see how she was doing. I visited in person every few months rather than more frequently as when I lived nearby. From the doorway today, I immediately saw her sunken cheeks, her grayish skin tone, and I noticed her breathing was deep but not irregular. As I approached her bed, it was clear that she no longer was aware of her surroundings, and as I touched her cool hand, there was no muzzle response. Her son affirmed that she had been like this for the past 12 hours, but had appeared comfortable. Their hospice team had taught him all of the medications that could be used, and he called that team occasionally as her pain had increased or when she started to become agitated. He showed me the notes he kept for hospice to demonstrate any medications given or symptoms that she had. I praised her son, and we talked about the decline that had happened this week. Our phone call had alerted me that the end was near, and I scheduled this visit with them. I felt such immense love for this client and enormous gratitude for being present. We had grown very close over this long walk together. I stayed a long while, and before I left, I anointed her feet with one of the powerful oils I had begun using, blessing her on her way and honoring her soul's journey. Her son had no questions and assured me that he would call when she passed and suggested that I go because the family would take over from here. And that seems to be what happens to me more than ever. I think that I get the families prepared and they say, no, we got it. And that's beautiful. I said my final goodbye and drove with the stars showering their light. I spent those hours remembering the visits, the long talks, the many highs and lows of my beloved client's journey. It had been unusual to work with someone for such a long while, and I continue to feel very blessed. That night, he called. When the phone buzzed just after midnight, I knew immediately that she had breathed her last. I cried with him, and he assured me that he would be in touch. I was invited to speak at her celebration of life when it was scheduled, something my client had put in her wishes. After hanging up, I lay in bed and connected to my heart. I prayed for my lovely client and soon felt her presence. I silently talked to her and praised her courageous walk through her years of cancer and all the family changes that had occurred. I talked to her soul and affirmed that she had indeed left her body, that her family was sad but joyous, and I encouraged her to follow the light, assuring her that she was heading to her highest reality. That's the soul care that we assume just happens. It does, but it can go much more easily. The soul is in transition and is in this period of it's not a dark tunnel, but it's no end or beginning. And now I connect with the soul and say, you have passed, to Nia, and talk and help. And it really is so beautiful to me. About 2 months later, I drove back to her home to attend her celebration. True to form, she had planned every detail, even the exact food that was to be served. Always an advocate of holistic health and eating, the food reflected that. Her beauty shone through every detail. The music was her favorite. The home was adorned with pictures of their family's years together. Her many pets had been all rehomed while she was still courageously able to assist. When I met her, I think she had 4 cats, a dog, a bird, and some other, I think it was a snake. I never went to look. But I mean, she just lived for these animals. She was so connected. And as she was getting close to the end, she found them homes as she was dying, which, think of what that would mean. It's like saying goodbye to your children, but she found them all a home, all on her own. So I have a book that she blessed me with before she passed, and an agate from her gift table that I took. She had a table of all her things. She didn't want anything left, so I picked an agate from that. I look at it every day and say hello to her. My client's son had been well supported during her final weeks. As she declined, the hospice team visited to help him to learn various caregiving practices. This is like a 23-year-old man who got married during this time. So this young couple taking over, and they did it beautifully. The medications that are standard within hospice for this period were in the home awaiting the need for their use. He had been instructed to call the hospice team with changes in her condition or any symptoms. They had then told him to begin any appropriate medicines from this pack if she wanted them. These final days or weeks are called the active dying stage and is used to describe the final stage of life. It is usually preceded by a rapid decline after weeks or months of more gradual decline in strength, cognition, and other symptoms. It represents that the body's regulation is no longer effective, that the dying process is advanced. The length of time that this is the case varies greatly from a few days to as much as a few weeks. The patient is usually unresponsive, appearing to be sleeping all the time. They remain in bed and require 24-hour bedside care and turning. Usually prayers and vigils are offered at this time. Yet the body is viewed as now empty. Okay, I have to fix this. The body is viewed as now empty and the spirit is passed into the next reality when the person stops breathing and the heart stops. But while true within that viewpoint, I see it differently. I view this as the most sacred point of transition as the soul leaves the body and then unbinds from the person's spirit before journeying into the next reality of consciousness. When light can be visualized, it's clear that the dying process is not completed yet. And to treat the body as empty and ready to be transported quickly leaves the soul without support. It certainly doesn't honor the sacredness of this time. The family is denied the beauty of learning how to help escort the soul beyond. And this is the new thinking that I want to help bring into the world. In order to more clearly explain this, let me define what soul is and what spirit is. These words are often used interchangeably, as I did for many years. I've learned much as my soul has begun to guide me, and now I clearly understand the difference. Because we are a soul seeking to have a physical experience, our physical body is created when prompted by our soul. This starts the energy matrix beginning to build our physical life. It's designed to provide the experiences that will allow the soul to grow and learn during the person's lifetime. It's from this energetic source that our mother's body prepares to carry us into this incarnation. Our life in the physical sense will continue to grow and mature from the continual pulse of life through the energy matrix. This pulse of life is the highest vibration, the divine spark, and recreates us continuously. As an RN, I understand that our cells have a lifespan of varying length and are recreated on unexpected schedules. This happens without our awareness, giving the illusion that our organs and skin are just there, but they're constantly being recreated and shed the old. That's the basis of the many forms of chemotherapy and other treatments that schedule cell destruction at different levels of maturity. It's all done with the knowledge of their recreation. And it's the same divine spark, the same divine pulse that pulses this recreation. Our soul is our eternal energy body and the carrier of our divine light throughout eternity. Our soul is the most inner part of our being, and it is the eternal part that can neither be created nor destroyed. Our soul, if you believe in past lives, it's the same soul through every one of those past lives. But our spirit is for this incarnation. It's who we are in this lifetime. So this is... Our spirit, though, is related to each incarnation. It's the spirit who we identify ourselves as. This is the part of our eternal self that is formed to allow our soul the experiences that it sought in this incarnation and is reformed each lifetime. It's connected to our ancestry and many other factors, helping to carry our ancestral lineage into this lifetime. It's who we call ourselves. It's part of our personality self that makes us who we are. The spirit guides our unconscious life in the world, seeks relief and healing from suffering, and has the opportunity to make choices that grow in alignment with our divine self, our soul. Each of us must learn the choices that bring us what we want. Our spirit is here to make missteps, to learn what being human is through our mistakes. Spiritually, our goal is to become fully human. to allow forgiveness and healing from our shadow side and any wrongs we've committed. As we do allow this, it's not unusual to hear someone say, hey, she's finally becoming human, meaning I've healed that difficult part of myself and it's softened with that love. And the ultimate goal is to become fully human and fully divine, embracing all parts of ourselves with love and acceptance. This is the Christ consciousness of our divine self that is filled with light. And that is the time of our evolution right now. We're beginning into the Christ consciousness. That's what's causing all the chaos in the world. As we grow and heal, we turn towards the inner voice of our soul, the part of ourselves that is timeless, that exists in eternity and never changes. It's our divine self, our divine love, and the place we touch through meditation, prayer, and other ways. Our soul wants to grow in love and maturity, wants to integrate our humanity, and chooses our birth for the experiences that are needed. As we become more and more aware of our choices and turn more and more towards allowing this divine love into our lives, our vibration grows with it. Leading a high vibration life is simply choosing to lead a life deeply connected and embodying the sacred and living from it. It isn't about holiness, it's about being fully human and authentic, and a heart overflowing with self-love. You know, I grew up through the Catholic faith as a young person, and you're taught to be holy. Well, that's an old perception. To be fully human and to be okay with who you are, you don't want to step on people's toes anymore. But when you do, you say, I'm sorry, and you move forward. You don't beat yourself up, you know, and that is the true beauty of it all. Just as our soul chooses our birth, it also prompts our death. It initiates the waning of the elements, which then causes the energy matrix to diminish. Remember that our energy, this was from the previous one, the energy matrix formed the physical body, and as the matrix decreases, the body becomes frail. It demonstrates that the elements are pulling back. As the earth element pulls back, as we age, it starts to pull back. We become more and more frail as we age. And even like with my dad, I used to say you can almost see through him. That's why I knew the earth element was almost all gone, you know, and he was walking around doing things, but becoming more and more frail and more forgetful. That transparent skin, I'm sure you've seen it on people. Hospice was designed to allow our bodies to slowly diminish and to allow our deaths to naturally occur. The original plan was that patients would receive this special support of the whole person for about 6 months, with comfort offered but not any more active treatment or aggressive measures. This philosophy has changed greatly over the years, and the length of time most people are referred to hospice has become greatly shortened. Now statistics show that hospice is only called by our medical community for the last 2 weeks of life. Within that short time, it remains the period of time that we allow the body to pass without intervention. Unfortunately, it denies the very beautiful time to accept and do the inner work of dying effectively, and the soul is denied the support it could have. It is shameful that we wait until people are almost dead to let them have hospice. Hospice is it's set up to support people for months and to help you get ready to die. Should I keep going? What time is it?
We're just about at time.
Okay, that's fine. Well, you'll have to read my book.
Yeah.
Yeah.